All right, it is now 7:00 p.m. It is the appointed time for our November 13th, 2017 Aleppo workshop meeting. I call this meeting to order. I'd like us all to rise, please. And I would like to recognize Vice President Jones to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Vice President Jones was the leading vote getter in Aleppo Township last week. So in recognition of getting more votes than anybody else, Vice President Jones, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
That's when you're first on the ballot. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Well, welcome everybody. I think for those who are watching the video either online at home or sometime later, you don't have the pleasure of seeing the very full house. You obviously recognize that we are not in our normal home of the Aleppo Township Municipal Building. Tonight we are holding this meeting at the Aleppo Township Volunteer Fire Department. And we do this once a year because we think that it is very important to come out and get to see all different parts of the township and get to hear from residents who might not be able to make it over to the township building for our normal meetings. So there's a very nice turnout here. I thank you all for coming out. I thank you for participating in local government. We can only do what we do because you come out and you participate. You've heard me mention, and you see obviously our setup here with video recordings. This is my time to plug what we do here. Google meeting, and we post it to YouTube. In the first instance, let me make sure that everybody understands that that means, number one, this meeting is being streamed live to the internet right now. Number two, this meeting will be available on YouTube forever in the future. So you're all on notice to be on your best behavior. If you say anything, oh, thanks. If you say anything out of turn, you can't get it back and take it off the internet. So be aware of that. In the second instance, though, let me also point out that if you want to get emails, we send an email out, not immediately after, but we try to do it as shortly as we can after our meetings, where we break down the things that we discussed at our meetings, and we send them out as a bulleted list. My expectation is that you'll spend about 45 seconds looking at this list of things that we talked about, and you scan through and you can look for things that are interesting to you. So we break it down. We say we discussed road paving, and then there's a link following that bullet item that says click here to watch this portion of the meeting. So you don't have to sit through a 2-hour meeting to find the parts that are interesting to you. You can only see the parts that you find fascinating, and give us 3.5 minutes twice a month, and you will know everything about the issues that you care about in Aleppo Township, or you'll know as much as we do. Is there a list going around?
There's a sign-in sheet for meeting attendance.
Okay, there's a sign-in sheet for meeting attendance. Why don't we send around a list for email addresses? I promise you, we will not spam you. I get spam too. I don't want it. I'm your neighbor. I promise you, the emails that you'll get from us, if you give us your email address, you'll get 2 emails generally a month. They are high-quality emails. They are not your normal nonsense that you get from governments or from elected officials. Okay, so that's been said. We've given the warning about, can we take a roll call, please?
President Philbrook.
Present.
Vice President Jones.
Present.
Commissioner Williams.
Present.
Commissioner Guerra.
Present.
Commissioner Fogga.
Present.
Solicitor Stone.
The record reflect that we have a quorum. Okay, following all the introductory business, I will entertain a motion to approve the October 16th, 2017 legislative meeting minutes.
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say no. On our agenda, zoning change request from Masonic Village. I think the way to set the stage for this is that we received off calendar a letter from Masonic Village requesting some various zoning changes, and we just didn't know what the next step was. So we decided we would discuss it here in the workshop without the expectation of taking a vote on it, but just to sort of prime it for further action. And we reached out to Masonic Village and let them know that we would be entertaining this discussion today. And we were joined by 2 individuals from Masonic Village. So I will recognize you and permit you to give us a pitch and tell us where you stand, and we'll go from there.
My name is Donald.
Why don't you come up to the front, please, so that we can pick you up on the microphone.
My name is Donald Graham. I'm an attorney with Dillon McCandless King Coulter. I represent the Masonic Village. Here with me tonight are Patrick Samsel, the General Counsel for the Masonic Village, and Joe Murphy, the CEO of the Masonic Village. It was a letter from me that started this process. That letter requested a couple of alternative ways in which we were seeking to amend the text of your zoning ordinance. We would not be changing the zoning district we're in. It would simply be amending the text. And the amendment to the text in the first instance was to modify a couple of definitions in order to allow a children's home to be part of the continuing care retirement community that the Masonic Village currently operates in Aleppo Township. We're hopeful that that would be the most, or the simplest way maybe to modify the zoning ordinance and to allow this children's home to be placed in the Masonic Village. We have defined a children's home. It is important to understand that that children's home will not involve people put there by the juvenile justice system or the criminal justice system, nor will it involve use that are in any drug or alcohol rehabilitation program. This is a youth home to serve children who are at risk because of conditions in their home life. Mr. Murphy will provide a little bit more of a presentation about exactly what is done there. We proposed an alternative way in the event that you decide that you did not want to include it in the continuing care retirement community, which would be to create a separate use for a children's home, additional use in the R2 zoning district, and it would provide various conditions that would have to meet or be met in order for somebody to operate that home. So one of the purposes of tonight is to provide you some background on exactly what this would be. And one of the other expectations from this evening would be to just get some feedback from how they might like to proceed under one alternative or another. This would ultimately require formal action to refer to your county planning commission and to the township planning commission. It would subsequently require a formal amendment to be prepared and advertised, the public hearing. So there are several steps that would have to occur down the road. This is just the first step in that process. So with that, I turn it over to Mr. Murphy.
Good evening.
Good evening.
It's a pleasure to be here. One of the things that I'd like to do is provide for the commissioners some information about the children's home and the importance that it makes in the lives of children. We also, I'd like to talk a little bit about the fact that we have been providing a children's home at one of our other retirement communities for 104 years. It's been a core part of our mission. The children who come to us, originally it was orphans. Today they're mostly social orphans, whereby their family situation has gotten to a point where they need help. These are not court adjudicated children. These are children that just need somebody to take them in and to provide love and support for them. I think one of the pieces for me is seeing children who many times are struggling because the support in their family is not there. They were able to come to our program with tutors and with support from house parents. They're able to go and turn around their lives. Today, right at this time, we're providing services up to 40 children at our campus in Elizabethtown, Lancaster County. We're proposing here that we would have up to 32 when we'd be starting with 16. One of the things I'd like to do is, if it's acceptable, I have 3 minutes of message from some of our children that I'd like to share just from the perspective of allowing them to tell you the difference that it can make in their lives and how positive this actually can be for Aleppo Township. So we're going to put it here. If anybody from the audience would like to see it and you want to adjust so that you can come up and see it, it's going to be on this computer screen. So
It'd be better if you put it up on the thing in the middle here.
Definitely big family, real big family.
When I first came here,
Let's just, if we put it there, we're gonna cause other problems. So let's just leave it here for now.
I barely talk to most of the kids, but just be here for 5 years, like get a bond with them, and just knowing them for so long. It's good to have friends here.
I had really fun times here. It's been fun having other people around my age to do stuff together and stuff.
I definitely love talking to my house parents. They have encouraged me to be a better student in school, be a better person.
They always say to me, what do you get back? And I get a lot back because every day I learn from them just like they learn from me. And it's a remarkable experience. It really is. I mean, I can honestly sit here and say I love what I do.
I think it's gotten me like more imagination, got me closer to God. I just like it here.
Children's Home has changed my life in many ways. The tutors here, amazing, fun to be with. That's ironic because no one likes doing homework. I've always kind of like wanted to be a leader and try to be a leader, and definitely with the Masonic Homes, they put me in camps, a leadership camp. Also being a leader in my cottage.
I really appreciate everything that's going on here. All the house parents that have taught me to become a better person, be more charismatic, find myself, definitely.
People that support the students and the house parents have such an important role in supporting children who come from sometimes very precarious backgrounds, are given so much security and such a great foundation to really grow their intellects and grow their personalities.
Well, back home, I never like played football, but when I first came, they got me into flag football and I transitioned to school football. And when I was young, I always wanted to learn Spanish. And I took that in 8th grade.
The children's home helps me with lessons, and it helps me understand the guitar playing better.
Well, ever since I was a little girl, little girl, okay, I've always wanted to be a singer, and me and a friend of mine have been working on that. We've been writing our own songs and composing different stuff, working together every day. It probably wouldn't have happened if it weren't for the children's home.
That's the one thing that the Masonic organization does. It gives to people, and then it teaches these young people how to give to others.
I have a voice.
I have really great grades.
I have sisters. I have music.
I have confidence in my leadership skills.
I have opportunities.
Donors, I love you this much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Masonic.
I think one of the pieces that I'd want to share with the commissioners and with those from Aleppo Township is these are some of the most fantastic children. This past semester, we wound up with 28 of our children who came to us, many of them not on grade level reading. They were either distinguished or honor roll students in Elizabethtown Area School District. These are young people that by the support that we're able to provide them, right now we have 10 in college. So once they finish this program, we continue to support them by enabling them to go on to additional education. We'd love to have this as part of our community here in Aleppo Township. I'd be open for any questions if there are any.
What's the, at Elizabethtown right now, what is the age span of the children who are there?
The age of the children are 6 to 18. In other words, they typically are coming in either in kindergarten or first grade. But because we do take siblings, so occasionally we've had a child that was younger than kindergarten because they're their siblings who are older, and then they go through graduation from high school.
Okay, thank you.
I assume these kids just don't walk up to the door and say, I'd like to be in your home. So how do you find them?
We typically work with school districts. A lot of times social workers within school districts know of children whose family's life is very tough. And the child just needs help, needs somebody to stabilize. We also hear from families. A lot of times today, we're the legal guardian who's placing this. It used to be grandparents. We've recently had great grandparents who were the only person who was able to be there for that child, and they needed help. So we'll hear from family, we'll hear from school districts, and then we hear from people in the community once they know the program's available. The other piece is we don't take any money from federal or state programming, so there's no requirement for a child to get in other than the fact they need help, and our program can serve them.
Do you have written acceptance criteria and testing that you do?
We actually bring them in for a weekend where they stay over a weekend with us to make sure that what we provide meets their needs, and also we can understand that a little bit better what the child's requirements are. We obviously talk with the school districts where they were coming from before. One of the pieces that is important that the children coming in, and it is very normal for them to not be on grade level in reading and or other skills. We bring tutors in at our cost as part of this program to bring them up. And we've seen amazing things happen in a very short period of time with our youngsters, with our children.
Familiar with the Girls Hope and Boys Hope homes?
I'm not.
Okay. I'm just wondering how your model compares to theirs.
We're a program where they're coming in, placed by their legal guardian, and then we have a house parent that is with the children, and there is a wake staff at night. Because of our licensure, we provide a wake staff at night. They're there to support that child, whatever their needs are, whether it's school, social needs that they have to talk with.
Have you done a market study, if you will? It might be the wrong term for what your model is, but I'm interested in what you've done to collect information about the, if you will, demand for your type of services.
Yeah, we've been doing this one, as I said, in Lancaster County in more central Pennsylvania. One of the pieces that we found is there are equal families here in western Pennsylvania, but because it's placing that child 3.5 to 4 hours to 5 hours away from whatever family they have, they're not making that transition to Elizabethtown. So in checking, there are not many programs like this anywhere in the state. And this program, we would be going to school districts in the western part of Pennsylvania to be able to reach out to children. In looking at this based upon what is available, we know that there's a need. And our goal would be to start with 16, 8 boys and 8 girls.
How do you know that there's a need? That's what I'm trying to find.
In looking at families throughout, we admit at the Elizabethtown location, from Philadelphia up through Wilkes-Barre, so the basic eastern part, we find children, we find families in every one of those areas that have a need. When we were looking, we have board members from western Pennsylvania, and we know that there are families and children here in this area that have needs very similar to this. There's not an option for them.
How many children does Elizabethtown accommodate?
We have capacity for 40. Right now we have 35 children.
Is there a wait list to get in?
There's not a wait list right now. We have availability for 5 more. And it is a process where we want to make sure that the child and the family are comfortable with that placement. So we don't push for them to come in until they're ready. Right now there are 3 young men who are in the process of considering coming into those 5 availabilities that we have.
So do you think this would ever, in this area, exceed 32? Do you have other property that you would want to ever expand into?
We believe that for this area, the 32 would be a maximum. Our goal would be to start with the 16, 8 girls and 8 boys. So we're able to reach out and be able to start providing the services. We believe, and I know that I'm not answering your question 100%, But the children that we see, those children are everywhere. Those families are everywhere. Those needs are there. And we went to look to see what was available in the way of services. And this type of service is not available.
I beg to differ with you. If I understand your model, I know there's 2 Girls Hope homes, one out here in the Baden area and one more in the city. And they're fairly full, but they tend to have vacancies as well. So I'm not so sure that you've looked at the market the way you should have.
What are the ages for these kids?
Typically, they're going into the first grade through the graduation from high school.
So do they drive?
Once they hit 16, we will go through the normal process, but they do not drive until they leave our program. In other words, we will work with them to get a license, those types of things, but they're not getting a car at like age 16.
And they would all attend Quaker Valley School Districts?
They would. And we did the superintendent of Quaker Valley School Districts to talk about what we did. And we placed her in direct contact with the superintendent from Elizabethtown School District so that she could go directly there and talk about what's it like for our children in their school district.
What do you provide by way of transportation? Because if you have your kids up here in the boonies, where what's happening with the school kids for the most part is down in the village, what do you do?
We provide a van with the school with each of the homes. So there would be 2 in this situation, one for the boys and one for the girls, so that as they're going to various programming activities that we're able to get them just like a family would.
If you were to move forward with this, is there a mutual complement to the 2 aspects of your mission?
Well, one of the positive things that we've seen is the opportunity for intergenerational programming. So many of the people who live in our Masonic Village here, they have all types of talents, whether it's from art to music to woodworking, you name it. A lot of teachers, professors. We've seen at our other campus that opportunity for them to have a direct relationship and interaction. It's a positive both ways, and that they get a chance to be able to help young people, and the young people, they love to come around when it snows and get the snow off people's cars and things like that. But it is a wonderful intergenerational programming. If that was the question, yes.
Define a little bit more in detail the night supervision program that you have. Sure. I don't know, I forget the phrase you used, but
it's a house parent. Yes. In other words, there is a house parent on during the day, 1 for 8, plus additional when we have additional things going on. And at night, the homes that we're creating, the homes are adjacent to one another with a common office space that enables them to be one person there awake while they're sleeping.
So is that the DHS ratio?
It's Department of Welfare.
Department of Welfare.
It is, yes.
So the supervision is 24/7?
It is, yes. And I have to share with you that the young people who are coming there over our 100 years, these are great young people who have just had really sad situations for family life. These are good kids that wind up just needing a break.
So the project that you're proposing is new construction, correct?
We have, and maybe that's something that Pat wants to touch on. We're contemplating one building that we have. And do you want to walk me through that?
So what this top graphic represents is actually the one that came along with the letter. And I don't know if all of you had a chance to see it or not. This property, yeah.
I hate to interrupt, but is that a good view for the YouTube?
I can't see it.
Well, we're never going to get a great view for the YouTube.
Okay, I'm just wondering, because if you can't see it, then it's.
I understand.
I can see it now.
We'll have to come up with something else. We can't.
Sorry.
Thank you.
So just to orient you, this building right here is the existing yellow house that's out there. We refer to that as the Yankello House because the former owners, their last name was Yankello. The initial intent would be to maintain this structure and then put an addition on the side closer to the intersection of Redgate Road and Merriman Road. So the existing structure would be reutilized. It would be demolished on the inside, repurposed, and become a space for 8 of the 16 initial children. Then the addition would be necessary for the other 8. What this plan showed was this plan then showed another future duplex on, again, closer to the intersection of Redgate Road and Merriman Road. Now, since that time, there have been some modifications to that, but it's essentially the same. All of these are in sketch plan form right now. Right now, what we're looking at is we're looking at 2 different plans. One has taken these 2 duplexes and turned them and slid them back closer to this parking lot area that we currently own. And then essentially this duplex becomes the second children's home. And that's what's represented down here. And I actually have handouts that I'm going to leave with you then at the end of the meeting. But that's what's represented on this drawing down here. This is the Yankello House again with the addition. This then becomes a similar structure that would be the second children's home.
Can you tell me how many children will be housed in each of those units? You said first you would start with 8 and you would expand.
Right. If you look at each one of these as a duplex, each one of these will hold 16. What I was saying is that the existing Yankello House has enough room for 8. And so our initial plan would be to put an addition on that to create enough room for the initial 16.
Okay. And then what about those other buildings?
These other buildings would then represent additional villas that are similar to the villas that we have out at the Masonic Village now. This plan represents the project taking place under the with the zoning changing under the CCRC ordinance. One of the things that we think that does is it allows us to integrate the children's home into our campus. It allows us to answer what a lot of the questions are that we've already heard or expect to hear. For example, what about financial viability of the home? Again, if it's integrated into our campus, there's a greater certainty of financial viability. What about the possibility to sell the home in the future? Again, if it's integrated into our campus, these homes really can't be separated from the remainder of the campus and sold to another entity at some point in the future. What about upkeep? What about the nature of the children? Well, the closest structure to any of these are going to be our own villas. So as far as upkeeping the children's home, as far as the nature of the children and the amount of noise and so on that's created, we hope that that provides a greater level of certainty by integrating that directly into our campus as opposed to creating it as a separate entity on a separate lot.
Okay, so the children are going to be in the blue buildings.
That's correct.
And then the yellow buildings will be part of the retirement community, basically.
They would be villas,
Villas
duplexes,
for-
villas, that would be similar to what we have out there now.
Like assisted living or
Independent living.
independent living,
Right.
but for seniors.
Are those villas a new construction?
Yes.
So that's an expansion of the
Yes.
capacity right now?
Yes.
So everything on your photograph is new construction except the 2 blue houses. Is that right?
No.
These 4 yellow tan
Yep.
duplexes are new construction. This is would be new construction, although I want to be clear that that would be the second 16, and we have no idea when that would be built.
Okay.
This, the left-hand side would be the existing Yankello House repurposed. The right-hand side would be an addition for the additional 8 children. So essentially, another point is that with the Yankello House being repurposed, the edge of the children's home proper, is not going to be moved any closer to the existing property line than it is today.
You have boys and girls in the same house?
They would be separate, in other words, 8 girls and 8 boys separated into separate private spaces. The only time would be when they're asleep at night. The on-call person, the house parent, would be in a common space between those, according to Department of Welfare regulations.
But there would be
So you wouldn't use the Yankello house until you had built the addition to it?
Correct. Correct. Yes. So that we would be able to be serving girls and boys, yes.
You're going to give us, or you've already given us a copy of this picture?
This picture is the one that came along with the letter. I'll hand that out, plus I will also hand out copies of the 2 current sketch plans that we have as well.
And do you consent to me making this a public document and circulating it?
That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we'll just post it.
Have you discussed this with any of the local school districts and or Allegheny County Health and Human Services?
We did meet with the superintendent of Quaker Valley School District to share what we were talking about doing multiple months ago, just to go and have a sense that as the conversation that the school district would be aware. Yes, we did. We did not with anybody else. That is the predominant person or organization that would have interaction with this. And one of the pieces, we have a phenomenal relationship with the school district because we're looking to go and have the absolute best situation for our young people when going to school.
Do you take it as a foregone conclusion that your residents want this?
I'm sorry.
Do you take it as a foregone conclusion that your residents want this? In other words, we're assuming that the main question for this board is what is the effect on the non-Masonic residents? But obviously your residents are voters as well.
Yes.
So.
Well, I think that with any matter that you bring up, there will not be 100% consensus that everybody wants the exact same thing. But I would share with you that this would be a place where both residents from our campus and residents from the Aleppo Township, we'd be happy to host them if they're coming through Elizabethtown to be able to talk with seniors who live there. This is nothing except for a positive. There is not any issues with these young people. The way that our children's home is in Elizabethtown is actually right adjacent to some of our villas there also.
There's not, in terms of volume, there's not a great deal of numbers of children. However, they're going to be going through some additional tutors and so on. When you were talking to the superintendent, did it appear as though this would put any stress on the school district?
We talked about that. That's why I shared with her the superintendent's email and telephone number for Elizabethtown, so she could go directly to her fellow superintendent and talk. But actually, it's quite the opposite. Our young people wind up getting so much support from us that in a lot of community situations in other homes that are
Okay,
there.
I'm sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, can we keep the conversation to one at a time, please? It's very difficult to focus when we have side conversations. Excuse me.
No, sorry. It winds up actually being less for a school district because we're providing the support. A lot of times in other individual homes, they don't have those support. So it is not an extra burden on the school district. And that's a place where, as I said multiple times, we put them in contact with the other school districts so they could talk directly on any of those issues so that they had it firsthand. But it's not an issue.
And then back to my question, you have not talked to Allegheny County?
We have not, no.
I think it would be a good idea because not only would they be able to give you a good understanding of the demand, the need, but all the licensing, et cetera, that you would require.
And it is a state licensure piece, and we will go and make the contact. We can go and follow up with that. We'll be happy to. Yeah.
Did I understand earlier in your conversation that, well, what did you say earlier in your conversation about the children who elect or whatever, going on to college. Is that part of the program in which they are completely supported?
It is. We actually start working with the children in high school, trying to prepare them for what they believe is going to be the best outcome. Many of those are looking for possibly additional education, maybe in a vocational area, or perhaps it might be to a junior college or to a college, and we support them in that whole gamut of options for them. We will assist them in applying for any scholarships that are available, whatever the difference is between the scholarship and the cost. The Masonic Village provides that, as many of us do as parents.
All right, so let's walk down hypothetically a couple different roads here. Your letter, as you said, proposed two different alternatives. And the first is adding definitions. Counselor, tell us what these two different options would entail from us.
Well, as I understand the main difference, first, you're going to have to define children's home, no matter what you do. So you're going to have to define that term initially. Once you do that, then essentially the differences are, you can make the children's home part of the existing conditional use, which is already existing on the property, which is a continuing care retirement community, which is permitted as a conditional use in that district. So you could make it a part of that entity or that use. Or the second option is that you could simply provide for a children's home in the R2 district as a conditional use. The big difference is that if you do the first thing, you're pretty much saying you're only approving the existing application on the site. If you go with the second option and you allow it as a conditional use for anybody in that district, you could have multiple applicants come into the district and request to put their children's home in that district. So the current, or the option A,
In other words,
fits
third party.
third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and so on.
Anybody in R2.
Anybody who wants to can apply for a conditional use in the R2. If they meet the conditions and they fulfill the general requirements, they would be entitled to their conditional use permit. So you're opening up the door for multiple children's homes in that district, provided they meet the conditions. Whereas in the first option, you're simply expanding you're expanding the definition to allow for a children's home within the current use.
Okay.
And so what would the process be for the two different options? What would we have to do? Say we said we wanted to go forward with the first option. What would we do procedurally?
So as Mr. Graham pointed out, these would be text amendments as opposed to zoning map or district changes. And what you would be doing in either case is amending the text. There is a process for amending the zoning ordinance, and you'd go through that process. It's essentially you send a copy to the county and they get to review it, and then there's advertising, there's a public hearing and a public meeting, at least one, and then advertising, and then there's post-adoption advertising. You send a copy to the county. So, there's a bunch of steps. It's all pretty well laid out in the MPC.
Plus, our planning commission has to look at it.
Well, yes, your planning commission would review. Your planning commission can review simultaneously with the county planning review. So you could send it off to both, which is what we usually do simultaneously. County gets a minimum 30 days to review. And I believe your planning commission also gets a minimum 30 days for review. And you can then schedule your public hearing after well, you can schedule it before, but you'd want to do it after the 30-day review period expired, because you'd want the comments from your planning commission and from the county to be part of the record.
Okay.
Does that make any sense? Have I missed anything?
No, I think you have it right on.
But either way, you're doing a text amendment to your zoning ordinance and the procedure is identical, whether you take option 1 or option 2. And I think I have emphasized or highlighted the difference, and I think Mr. Graham did as well.
Okay, so again, assuming that we, well, I guess the question is, and that's probably why you're here, you want to know if there's a preference for option 1 or option 2?
I suggested to your solicitor that if there was a preference for 1 or 2, that I would amend the request we've made to only have that request. So it would be simpler for the county planning agency to review and your township planning commission to review, because they're only reviewing one proposal as opposed to alternative proposals. So I thought it was a simpler thing if we got feedback from you and you had a desired preference.
And what is the downside of if it was just a standalone, separate entity for you financially? I mean, it's not viable as much. You were saying the viability that was tied into.
I think one of the pieces is some of the questions that were asked. It truly is an intergenerational piece. The success that we've seen is that it's in our community, meaning, and I'm talking about small C community, Masonic Village community. So it has the interactions with the seniors who are there, the programming, the swimming pools, the things that are there, the wellness centers. They have access to all of those within walking distance of where they are. It makes it easier for us to provide more to them than if it was someplace different. Did I answer your question?
No, I mean,
I'm sorry.
if it was a standalone facility not tied into
Oh, you're talking
Masonic,
about,
if it was adjacent, that's one thing, but just as the way it operates financially and from other aspects. You were saying it was tied into it. It was more viable.
The point that I was making was that a question that's often asked in cases like these, people are concerned about the viability of the children's home itself. What's going to make it so that it doesn't degrade physically? What's going to make it so that it doesn't get in trouble financially and it gets sold off to somebody else to run? So that was the point that I was making. I don't think that there's really a difference in financial viability from our perspective. It's just a question that's often asked out in communities about uses like these. How can we be sure that this is going to remain financially viable and not decline?
and that's where I was going. The things that I was talking about are extras that if this was out by itself, we wouldn't be able to afford to provide some of those accommodations, where here they get to have the chance to go to, we have art studios with artists that could be helping them learn some of those things. We have musicians. We have so many people there that can do this. Plus, we already have an indoor swimming pool and we have a wellness center. So there's a lot of things there. The question was about what's the age of the children. If we wound up with a group of siblings and say one of them was 4 and the others, we also have a child daycare center so that that child could go to the child daycare center right there on our campus. And we've done this at our other community. It just provides resources. It makes it easier for us to provide more for these children than if we were someplace by itself.
There is one other technical thing. Your ordinance doesn't allow 2 uses on the same lot. So for us to do this, if you said it was going to be a separate use, we would have to subdivide the property and put this on a separate lot, which creates setback issues, minimum lot size, and all the requirements that you would have for a standalone use. Could you quickly just give one example of a child that has come to your Elizabethtown facility, what their circumstance was and how they came to be at your facility?
Typically, there will be problems where the parents have had some type of addiction or they've been incarcerated. And then they wind up with their grandparents, trying to provide support for them. And sometimes it's a tough situation there for that person to do this. Typically, they wind up falling behind in school. As I mentioned earlier, it is very normal for us when a child comes to us for them to be 1 or 2 grades behind in their skills for school. But we found with our children, with the proper support, the support from a tutor, our children are back on grade level typically within a year. And normally, as I shared with you some of the results of their grades, and they actually excel. And with that opportunity, not just with grades, but with playing guitars and doing other things that children would do, we've been able to see that happen with these children. It is where we've seen these children go and wind up doing exceptionally well in school and exceptionally well in college or in other applications. And then later in life, be able to have a successful life. And that's the goal with this. This is all about us trying to reach out to 16 children here in Western Pennsylvania. We want to do this. The Masonic fraternity is looking to be able to support these children. It is something we really want to do through our Masonic Village to provide all the other supports that I was sharing earlier.
How do you determine that a child from an addiction home situation doesn't have the same problem waiting to?
Well, I would share with you that I know some of the best families that have wound up with a child having addiction problems. So I can't guarantee that some child in the future won't have an addiction problem. We've not seen that because we're constantly monitoring with regard to that. But the children coming in, most of them are young. They've not had any of that except they've seen what it's done to people in their family, and it's ripped those family members' lives apart. Most of the children don't want to have outcomes like that because they've seen how horrendous that was for somebody in their family. I think that possibly sometimes is actually a positive why we don't see them wanting to experiment or do those things, because they've seen the absolute pits with some of their family. I'm not sure if I was answering your question sufficiently or not.
Well, I mean, early in your presentation tonight, you said that you don't take kids with addiction problems and that sort of stuff. And I'm just trying to figure out, how do you know when you're interviewing a kid that's coming from a family that's got that problem? That's why the kid's with you in the first place. How do you know that you're not going to have to put up with a problem?
One of the pieces that they are placed there by their family, which means that if the child does break the rules, they're returned to the family. The legal guardian stays with whoever that person is. So if a child would go and violate our rules, they're returned to the family. Our goal is to have that not happen, but that is the results. If you do not follow the rules, then you are not going to be able to be part of this service.
During this part of the discussion, just dawned on me, if the children are developing a lifestyle up there, which is quite different from what they left, how do the children and the parents or grandparents or legal guardian maintain a relationship?
Requirements by Department of Public Welfare allow them to have visitations home every other weekend. We will do that unless the child says, I don't want to. Now, typically there is a person in the family that the child will want to go and spend time with. We've had a few where there was nobody in the family that child wanted to go to, and they then stay with us continuously.
In developing this concept, did you do what I would call a needs analysis?
You mean back in 1913 when?
No, I'm talking about for this particular project.
What we did was we were looking to see whether or not bringing children to Elizabethtown from Western Pennsylvania was a viable option. And over the last 30 years, we've only had 1 or 2 that came there, but we have heard of from various contacts children who have needs. We've not gone through, if you're looking for a business strategy piece with this, we did not do that. That is very normal for us to do with just about everything we do. This is driven more towards the fact that we know here, just like at every other community where we are serving, there are children that have a need, and we want to do this. With the approval through Aleppo, through going through the county, the various steps, we will start reaching out to school districts in this area to go and start doing exactly what you're looking for, to see, okay, who are those? We can start talking with the families and start preparing for us to be in a position to provide those services.
Don't you think that's information you should get up front before you start down the road with a project like this?
In any other situation, I would agree with you 100%. I don't know how I tell a child, though, we're thinking about starting a children's home or a family, and then wind up having it not approved. I couldn't do that. So this is, I agree with you. If any other thing we do,
But you're asking to put us in a position of approving something that sounds like, and I don't know that this is the correct word, but you're just going to take a flyer on.
No, it's not that. What I'm sharing with you is, unless we know that there is a sincere possibility, we don't want to go to families starting to talk about this as an option and then have it taken away from them and they don't have a choice. So we're looking to make sure we're going through, working with the township, with the school district, with the county, making sure that we're answering those questions. I will tell you, this is, actually, I'm sad to have to say this, but I have no doubt we'll find 16 children. We won't have a problem finding 16 children. Unfortunately, we won't have a problem finding 16 children.
Well, I guess, I mean, at the risk of sounding cold and calculating, well, let me fight somebody else's fight, and then I won't sound as cold and calculating. What's in this for the school district? You're obviously putting an additional impact on the school district.
Actually,
you're a nonprofit organization, right?
I understand. We do, first of all, we have a pilot agreement. We pay quite a good amount to the school district with no children going there today at all. With this program, every child that comes from a school district outside of Quaker Valley, that dollar amount for that child gets transferred to Quaker Valley School District. So this is typically, and this from a funding perspective, is a very it is a positive thing for the school district. It's
You're
not
talking about
negative.
education dollars versus tax dollars, though.
Yes, education dollars, yes.
But your pilot is existing, and it doesn't contemplate this.
The pilot was actually, when we entered into the pilot agreement, it is a very sharing pilot agreement with the school district, very positive. In comparison, most charities are doing a small fraction of what we're doing with our pilot agreement.
Well,
for the audience, would you define pilot?
I'm sorry. Pilot is a payment in lieu of taxes. We're a tax exempt organization, but we entered into an agreement that we pay payment in lieu of taxes for the county, for the township, and for the school district.
Should we open up to the audience for questions?
Well, I don't think we're not at a public hearing yet. What would you want from us? What would be your knockout? What's your application? What do you want?
Tonight?
Yes. We're not tonight. We're not going to vote on anything tonight. We traditionally don't take business up at the workshop meeting, but were I to put something on the agenda for our next action meeting, which is next week, what would you want that action to be?
That action would be to move to refer to the County and Township Planning Commission a zoning text amendment that authorizes this as what puts a definition of a children's youth home in or children's home in. It modifies the definition of a continuing care retirement community and a life care community so that we could put this on the existing continuing care retirement community property.
Okay, so let me take a crack at this, and I will make a motion, and I'll make the motion tonight, and if we get a second, I will immediately make a motion to table this until next week. My motion, tell me if this is pretty close to what you said. My motion is to amend the text of the Aleppo Township zoning ordinance to add a definition for a children's home and amend the definition of a continuing care retirement community and life care facility / senior living community as specified in your letter dated October 19, 2017, and send the application to the Township Planning Commission and the county for further proceedings.
Correct.
That's my motion.
I would add, sorry, I would add that we look at both options further. I would like more information on both options. I don't know if you're leaning toward option 1 or option 2.
Well, that is option 1.
He was
Yeah.
option 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, option number 2, I think, is fraught with concerns.
Okay, so, I mean, just to follow a decent order here, there's a motion and a second. Now, do I hear you making it?
Who was the second?
Art.
Okay, I didn't hear.
Commissioner Williams. So then I then move to table that for 1 week.
Second.
So there's a motion and a second. All those in favor of tabling the motion on the table for 1 week, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed, say no.
No.
Okay. Now, did I hear you making a second application?
I would like to further review of both options, more time than 1 week.
Okay. So your motion is,
To extend the time period to review both options.
okay. So the motion that I've noted from Commissioner DePlaga is to extend the time period to review both options. Is there a second on that?
Second.
Okay.
So you have 2 motions
So
to
we
get
have,
next
we have
week.
2 motions. Well, but that one's on the table right now. So I'll entertain a motion to defer that for 1 week as well.
So moved.
Okay. And I'll second that. So all those in favor of deferring for 1 week the motion to extend the time period to review both options, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carried as well. So the way I look at the scorecard at this point, we got 2 different motions that will be entertained next week. I'm certain that between now and next week, when this digest comes out, there will be public comment. I say to the audience, if you have thoughts about this, please send us emails. I would be welcome to hear what everybody has to say. This will be voted on next week. So if you don't want to send an email, if you'd like to speak about it, then please come to our meeting next week at the Aleppo Township Building. Yes.
Are we allowed to ask them questions now or make comments now?
You can certainly ask questions now, although I note that the time and the more appropriate time to have this conversation is next week. So if you have a preliminary question,
So we're allowed to ask all this stuff that we have in our heads this week, next week?
yes.
This is like a new workshop next week? So-
Well, it's not a workshop next week. We're going to take up action next week.
So you're gonna take a vote on it next week?
Correct. So if you have preliminary questions that you want to ask now, you can ask those questions now.
I'm gonna have about 4 or 5 either comment or question. Is that okay? I'll try to be fast.
Okay.
Okay,
Could you stand up
Yeah,
and speak
yeah.
up a little because it's hard to hear.
Actually,
what
come
you're
up to the
saying.
front, please.
So we're good.
That's good.
Yep.
Okay.
Good enough.
Okay, my name is Sandy Moore. I live on Red Gate Road. And this is gonna affect me a lot, because I'm right there. So I just have a couple questions, comments, I don't know what order they're in. But I thought in the very beginning, you mentioned about how you successfully run the children's home now in
Yes.
Aleppo?
Now, we run it
Okay, that
in,
was a miscommunication or a misspoken.
Yes.
Okay,
we have a child daycare.
you have a child daycare, I know that's why I just wanted to clarify. Thank you. Now, Mr. Murphy? Oh, that's you, sorry.
That's Joe.
Joe, okay, Joe. You say, oh, this was such conviction as if you really want to help these children. But in 104 years at Elizabethtown, you're only helping 40 children. And as you said, there is a need in every community for this. And here you want to build it up to 32. To me, it's kind of like a random sample. And it's like you're just dabbling and you're holding this carrot for, why isn't it there are a lot more children at Elizabethtown? You've had 104 years where you've been doing this. That's another question.
Do you want him to respond while you ask?
Well, yeah, you can do that. You can respond, sure.
We've gone from having over 100 to down to 8 to where we're at 40. And a lot of it's depending upon what services are available in the community and what families are looking to do. And what is the method that children are being treated in. So we've been in the 40 at that location for approximately 20 years now. And that has been, we go through having 5 to 8 graduate every year. So we're constantly bringing new children in. And sometimes families stabilize and the child goes home.
It just seems like, so services change within the community, I guess, and that's why it dropped from 100. So is this really a good thing that's working? I mean, I want to see everybody have a good life. Don't get me wrong. But I just, you're a retirement community. Way back, I've been in the township for quite some time, and I was here when you first started to build your community. And it was said that, you're just here to have a retirement community, and it was all about retirement, and all of a sudden you want to bring children in. You're going to introduce people that you say have been incarcerated or maybe addicted, the parents, the parents or the guardians or whoever. You are now introducing possible criminal type people to our community and to your community, which are elderly people. And that's kind of scary to me because some people that, are elderly or sick can't fend for themselves as well as they would like to. So I think you're putting them at risk as well.
It turns out that the actual case, that they don't, but I understand your question.
Well, you're not living right beside them, but
Well, actually, for close to 20 years, I lived right adjacent to the children's home on our campus because at that time, when I was on call, I had to live there on the grounds
Okay,
with
you
my
lived on the
family,
grounds.
raised my children right adjacent to the children's home.
I'm sorry about that. As soon as I said that, I shouldn't have said that because I have no clue where you live.
Yeah.
Okay. And the thing about the pilot payment in lieu of taxes, and you mentioned that, we don't have any children and we're paying school taxes, so to speak, in county and township taxes. Well, I'm going to venture to say that a lot of people that maybe don't have children, they're also paying taxes normally. And I used to have children in the school district, but they've graduated and I'm still paying taxes. So I think that's a moot. That's not even, I don't think that should be a comment.
Well, the other piece
should be
that our
considered.
organization provides over $2 million worth a year of free services. Nobody
who?
else, to individuals that we serve in our nursing, personal care, and retirement living.
People pay for that service.
No, I'm telling you, $2 million we're not being paid for because we provide charity services.
But you have a plan that says you pay X amount of dollars to start off,
Not for everybody.
and then
We take a
if
lot
you
of
have to
people,
go through.
a lot of people who come to us,
Okay, you may have some charity people because if they're, dining out in their life, but you have a lot of people that spend a lot of money to go there. And with the agreement or with the idea, and Mr. Jones, do you live there or no? No? Masonic?
I do.
You do, okay. So maybe you might know this answer or something I put you on the spot, and I'm not meaning to put anyone on the spot. But it's quite expensive to live there. And then it's with the agreement that in case you need extra care, then you move along. But that's already built into your cost to begin with.
It is a life care community.
Right, so, I mean,
But that's not everybody we're serving at that location.
okay, well, I do a lot of volunteer work too, so please feel sorry for me as well. I don't give $2 million. But the point is, that's very nice that you help people out that can't afford to live there, because it's a nice idea. But at the same time, that's something that you choose to do. And it's, you
We're a
know,
charity.
I
I agree with you. We do choose to.
Yes.
We're a charity. That's part of our mission.
right, so, and let me see, I think I'm almost done. Time, what's kind of the time frame of this? I know you have to wait to see with the planning commission and whoever else. Oh, and I wanted to see can I see your picture, please? And what's kind of your time frame?
It depends upon the process going through with the township.
Right,
for the
what would be
approval.
your goal? What would be that you'd want to have it?
Like if they say yes next week, sorry, I didn't speak
Oh, no,
my turn.
there you go.
Like if
Okay.
they said yes next week, what would be your timeline?
Could you identify yourself for our minutes?
Sorry, Kathy Heinzman, I also live on Redgate.
So the rezoning process for the text amendment, I'm guessing is probably a 3 to 4 month process by the time all the advertising and hearings and everything are held. Once that process is done, we would have to submit a land development plan to lay out how exactly the site's going to be developed. Probably another 4 to 6 months to do that. All goes well, construction after that.
So within about a year is what you're thinking, correct?
Hopefully sooner, but possibly.
Okay. I know I'm probably gonna miss something here. Whoops. So the Yankella house, that would be your first thing, that's the addition. Then you would build, over here, Redgate, you would come closer this way. This would be your second. So would that be like in the empty lot of the Yankellas? Because they own two lots, so this would be the empty lot.
Yes.
In the front. I thought you said something about pushing and moving something.
Yeah,
back, so-
that was the
Yeah, that was
initial,
you.
that was the initial sketch that came with the letter. Since then, it's been modified. If you actually look at the other two drawings that were passed
I
around.
only saw one.
Yeah, and actually,
Oh, I
you can
saw
go,
two.
you can go up there too, but essentially, there's one drawing that really pushes this home back in this direction to
Okay.
here, and then there's another one that puts the second children's home pretty much on the opposite
So
side.
what would go here then, nothing? That'd be frontal.
If you look at, you'll have to look at, yeah, in that area right there, actually, in our plans, there's really nothing at that point in time where that blue spot is.
There will be nothing of the blue spots on.
Right now, if you're looking at that plan, that second group of 30, or that second duplex sits right here. So essentially, on this plan, you can see that's basically become a turnaround, and the children's home has been moved, the second children's home has been moved here.
In the
We also-
backyard of the Yankella home.
In the back, we also have another sketch which actually just shows that second children's home on the opposite side. It's slid from close to Redgate Road farther back towards
Further
our
back.
campus.
Okay,
And I know I'm getting in some people's way, but I'm trying to figure out how to.
okay. And then so then where these are villas
That's
so
correct.
far, but then there'll only be 2 villas here. Or
No, actually, each plan that we have shows eight
Oh, there's still gonna be 8 villas.
four duplexes. That plan actually slides 2 of the duplexes back close to that parking lot, that property that we already own.
And you're gonna need parking for all this and,
It's included in the drawings.
oh, okay, so I'll see that there. Did I miss anything, guys? I don't know. I appreciate you letting me ask a whole bunch. If I have more, I'll send them to you. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I know, I got it. I used to have kids. Yeah, they're just older, big kids. Same thing.
All right, anybody have anything else? Will you be, yes,
I just have one
come forward, please.
question. Kathy Heinzman, also on Redgate. I want to know, do any of these children have IEPs? Do you know what I'm talking about? Or do these children have Asperger's, autism, any other type of?
Any type of learning disability.
Exactly.
I suspect, and I don't know if you know that for your students or not, but I suspect like any other random sampling of kids, someone's gonna have one.
There would be various children who could be on various aspects of like the autism spectrum, but they are not children who require special care in the school district. That was a conversation we had with the school district. Those are not the children that are coming into this program.
Okay, that's what I was, or care within the home, or need extra care within the home.
Yeah. Now, I would share with you, we have had children who have been handicapped that possibly needed to use a wheelchair or something of that nature, but were fully functional otherwise. And we have served those children too. But we have specific criteria as to what we can provide for the children, and they fall within those parameters. And they do not require additional at the school district.
Okay. I have one other quick question was, and this was something that Sandy sort of mentioned. Because of the background that these kids are coming from, is there going to be opportunities that encourage the families to come to the campus? Or are these kids primarily going to be getting to visit families? Are they going to grandma's house, or are these people all coming to the campus?
They typically go to grandma's house. Would be a situation where somebody might come to see a child in some special event. But again, we have house parents there to go and make sure that is a positive for the child as well as for our community. And I would share with you the concern that was expressed. We have up to 40 children, and that has not been an issue from the perspective of those families coming any more than what we see in the normal community.
All right, thank you.
Counselor. Sorry. I could probably do this next week, but since you're here and I'm not sure you'll be here next week, I wanted to ask. In the definition of children's home, there's a reference to care of children in a residential treatment program. What's meant by a residential treatment program? What does that contemplate?
Yeah, and I'm going to have to defer to go back to see what specifically. This is licensure through the Department of Public Welfare. That's where our license comes from. And so I'm not sure what the definition that they're looking at there. I just know what our program is. And we have children who are looking for educational support. They are dealing with emotional support that we work with them to be able to help them deal with specialists, to be able to deal with some of the things they've had in family lives. But they're going to a point where they're going through and becoming active students in the school and then going to college.
So maybe Dawn, for next week, if you could maybe get some more information so we know what's meant by the treatment program.
I think Joe's correct. I think it comes from the definition of the Department of Welfare.
100% privately funded?
100% privately funded. We're currently raising money for this program just like we did for our children's program in Elizabethtown. Yes.
I do recommend a preliminary conversation with Allegheny County regardless.
We'll make sure to do that. And I also think that if we wind up being able to move forward, your questions and comments, I'll take the risk and go out and we'll start looking seriously so that we can give you a better answer when it comes for final vote as to what the need is in the community. It's a very good question. I'm trying to balance not wanting to go and give hope when I'm not sure that I have it yet.
Yeah, at the same time, there's a lot to this process that.
Yes, I understand completely. We will get the answer for you. I agree and understand your question.
Commissioner DePlaga, I saw your hand sort of halfway go up. Do you have
I
something
was
you wanted to
just
add?
commenting, I mean, I know residential treatment can mean a lot of different things, but my experience is to kids that have serious behaviors and or disabilities that are put into residential treatment where they have, like nurses and that sort of care. But yeah, that definition can be really broad, so it'd be good to clarify.
It could also seems a little conflicting with the idea that, we want to make sure that it's not a treatment program for substance abuse or for something that's otherwise prohibited.
Exactly.
Does the definition that you need for your purposes need to be as broad as the definition might be for the term in the statute?
I will go and look at what's in that, and I would be happy to go and to submit what our program is specifically. That probably would not be as broad.
Okay, well, there's two motions on the table for next week. Thank you for coming in tonight. I encourage, as I said, anybody involved, anybody who has a stake in this, speak to one of your elected commissioners, come next week, and let us hear your voices, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Would you like the extras in case somebody wants them, please?
Okay. Next on our agenda, old business, core sampling proposal, Swickley Heights Drive.
No. Oh, to explain it?
Yeah.
No, you do it.
Okay, this is a proposal that we got from our engineer. On our road study, the intent is for the next road to be paved is Swickley Heights Drive, and before the engineer draws up a spec, thank you, for that project, they want to make sure they know what the base is underneath that road, because it had some more cracking than expected after the last paving job, so this would go do some core samples to see what kind of base would be needed.
Do you know the area affected? Like how many linear feet we're talking about, or which portions of the road? Or is it the entire road? Or?
The entire, the thought was the entire Aleppo portion of Swickley Heights Drive, not the Swickley Heights portion. So they'll be doing test samples throughout that area.
From the beginning of the manor all the way to the cul-de-sac at the end?
Yes.
Okay. So how many cores are we talking about, do you know?
Here, it's in this.
6.
Okay.
Lump sum of
Minimum of 6.
45, 26, 50.
That's the cost, yeah. The minimum of 6 cores.
So we're looking to.
We'll vote on it next week.
Okay,
I'll just-
so this is for information right now.
Okay.
Well, so let's just be clear here so we know what we're voting on next week. The proposal
The lump sum.
is a lump sum of $4,526.50. And it's this proposal that's specified in the letter dated October 13th, 2017, correct? Okay, so again, in the interest of lining our agenda up for next week, I will make a motion that I will seek to defer to approve the core sampling work as specified in the October 13th, 2017 letter.
Second.
Okay, and then I'll make a motion to defer that for 1 week.
Second.
There's a motion to defer the motion to approve the core sampling work as specified in the October 13, 2017 letter for 1 week. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. All right, that is deferred. Thank you. Act 172 resolution.
You have a sample resolution in your packet. This is the companion piece to the ordinance that was adopted last month for the volunteer firefighter and EMS tax credit that was approved by the board. And so this resolution sets forth the criteria that the individual agencies have, and it also matches up with whatever state requirements are in the act. I mentioned in your memo that this may be tweaked from this version that you see right here, because I still need to spend a few more minutes with the fire chief to make sure that what we have in here matches their bylaws. But the gist of it will be the same. The highlighted section might be slightly different before next week, but you'll have it before you vote on it next week.
Okay, so that's not ready for motion yet.
No.
Okay.
But it will, could be ready to be voted on next week. So
That's what I mean, right, okay. All right, Trapezonia Plan number 5, date reapproval.
This is a plan that was approved in the summer, and this is unrelated to the 2 applications that they submitted that were tabled last month. This is a subdivision on an adjacent parcel that was the long, thin parcel that they just sought to cut in half and subdivide the one parcel, and that's already been approved. They weren't able to get it recorded in time at the county, so they've resubmitted it with a new date signature on it. So you would be reapproving next week a plan that you've already approved. We've done these a couple times for different applicants when they don't get it done in the 90 days.
Is this their first request for an extension? For a reapproval at the time?
Yes,
Why couldn't they get it?
surveyor, communication issues, and just didn't get it down there. Didn't get the signatures and didn't get it down there.
Okay, so,
Let's put it on next week's agenda.
okay. New business, 2018 meeting dates.
Meetings, the legislative meetings are usually held the third Monday of every month. There's been a request to move the March one because it conflicts with the Sewickley Heights Manor Homes Association annual meeting. And so I gave you the list of dates for 2018, and the one that has the star by it is proposing to move that meeting to Tuesday of that week. So it would be the third Tuesday of the month.
Want me to make a motion and then defer it?
Yes.
I move to schedule the legislative March meeting 2018 to the third Tuesday of March.
All right, scheduled legislative meeting the third Tuesday of March. Now, do we need to formally vote to hold the other meetings, to schedule the other meetings?
Normally you don't. You just say, yes, let's continue what we're doing, and I advertise them.
Okay, so this is adequate to just address the March meeting?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll second that motion, and then I'll make a motion to defer this for 1 week.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to defer for 1 week. All those in favor of deferring, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries. All right, new business. Is there any other old business before we turn to new business? Hearing none. New business. Verizon franchise agreement time extension.
So a couple months back, I started trying to figure out who we could negotiate with at Verizon for their new cable extension or for the renewal. I sent out a letter to a couple people, and they kept referring me to somebody else. And I finally got a response from somebody who said, this Paul Train, and he said, yeah, well, we'd be happy to negotiate a renewal. And let's start with our old agreement as a starting point, and we'll discuss terms similar to the terms that we discussed with all of our other municipalities that we serve. And in the meantime, we may not be able to come to an agreement before the current term expires, which I believe is the end of the year. And so why don't we just agree to a 30-day extension on existing terms? And during that time, starting now, we can start negotiating, any changes. So it's up to you guys. I don't know that it's a big
Carry
deal.
on.
Yeah, I don't know that that's a big deal.
Yes. Carry on.
I can also say that I've begun reviewing your current agreement, and I've been analyzing it in connection with other contracts that Verizon has entered into with other communities, and that's how I plan to go back to them.
Okay. So we don't need to take any action on that?
Nope.
Great.
Well,
yeah, they need to authorize.
Yeah, I mean, I think you probably should authorize me to grant the extension on current terms while we negotiate the renewal.
So moved.
Authorize the solicitor to grant extension. What did you?
30 days.
30-day extension as requested by Verizon.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Is there a motion to defer this for a week, or do you want to vote on it now? Let's defer. I move to defer it for 1 week.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor of deferring it for 1 week, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay. All right. Discussion of code enforcement. This is one that I will present. Here's sort of the backstory on this, how this came to be. As everybody on the board is aware, there are several existing property maintenance complaints in Aleppo Township that we've been dealing with, that we sort of talk in circles about. And at Seven Springs, at the convention that a few of us went to, there was a conversation with respect to property maintenance. And during that conversation, I asked some commissioners from other municipalities how they dealt with similar property maintenance issues. And they mentioned the name of an individual named Craig McVicker at property, the agreements in. Here it is. Craig McVicker, CEA Code Enforcement Associates, LLC. And so Gwen and I had an informational meeting with him. And he came and he proposed this agreement that is in here. And basically, his pitch was that he is a pro at property maintenance enforcement issues. And he basically, it is akin to outsourcing our police protection the way we deal with Ohio Township. So what we do now is we have one individual who is both our property maintenance enforcement officer and he is also our building officer, building inspection officer. So if you come and you have a request to build a new house or a new deck, he's the one that comes out and does the inspections and issues the building permits. He also handles property maintenance issues and complaints. And what we've been doing up until now, my perception of it, is a very reactive approach to property maintenance. If there's a complaint, we forward that complaint on to our property maintenance enforcement officer, and he goes out and he tries to work with the resident and might write a letter, and then may ultimately issue some sort of a citation. Craig McVicker and CEA Code Enforcement Associates take a bit of a different approach. They are uniformed officers who have marked cars, again, not unlike a police car, and they very proactively drive around the municipality and look for code enforcement issues. When they find them, they handle the citation and enforcement process pretty much soup to nuts. So he told us, your solicitor will love me because I do all the court. I will hand your solicitor a binder that has all the exhibits. We have it all worked out. We're very good at this. We specialize in using different avenues to get compliance. So they talked specifically about bringing in the Department of Health and relationships that they have formed with the Department of Health. They have special relationships with the district attorney's office. Typically, they focus on blighted communities where they're trying to solve problems with respect to abandoned property. But he said it's not uncommon that there are communities such as yours where there are just a few issues that we need to address. The trade-off to Craig McVicker and CEA Code Enforcement Associates is that they are expensive. So right now, I think we said we budgeted in 2016, we budgeted something around $2,000 for code enforcement. Is that about right? Craig McVicker's, the contract that he's submitted to us is $125 per hour for general work, $150 per hour for time, travel, and administrative expenses, and $250 for time, travel, and administrative expenses with respect to court. Gwen and I just did some back of the napkin estimates, and we guessed that we would go from around $2,000 in code enforcement per year to somewhere around $8,000 to $10,000 in code enforcement per year if we took this different tack. I will add that I have an additional concern, and I'm glad to be having this conversation here in this portion of the community, because I suspect that if we hire, frankly, a hired gun, we say go out there, it is this portion of the community that he will be citing. I suspect that he will not be finding many citation issues in the Sewickley Heights Manor Homeowners Association, where 3 of us live, because that's a planned community where we have enforcement baked into our bylaws, and it just doesn't have the same issues that we have here. So while I see heads shaking in the back of the audience as I described this Craig McVicker, I want you to make sure that you understand that it's a stick with 2 ends, and I certainly I am not here trying to push this, trying to advocate for this plan, and I don't want to find out in 8 months that people are upset because there's citations being issued, because all we're trying to do is untie or cut a Gordian knot that we've run into, right? That with the way we have it now, we just keep not being successful at getting resolution. So this is just a different way to try to come at this problem. But I am very aware of some potential problems that could come up down the road. And I will add that I think there may be a middle ground as well that we've sort of talked out, which is that we could try to use our existing code enforcement officer in a different way. We could try to ask him, could you be a little more aggressive? Could you be a little bit more proactive rather than reactive? But I don't, that's got downsides in and of itself. He's got other jobs. He's not CEA and Craig McVicker, where he is going out, cruising, looking for this stuff, has protocols in place for how to write the letters, follow up on the letters, get them to court, get them down to the Court of Common Pleas. That's not his bailiwick. So we could try that, and it would probably be less expensive, but I don't think it would have the same result as bringing in these code enforcement specialists.
Could this fellow be used, like if we had a really hard case in our township, where we brought him in just on a per case basis and just keep our regular guy? And
Yes, and we specifically asked him that question, and that's certainly an option, is that you could use him, as you say, on a one-off basis, keep our guy as the statutory code enforcement officer, and just have him look at your hard cases. The problem with that is that what we run into, and this would be even worse if we did that, but the problem that we run into is that we look as if we are targeting somebody. Exactly. So you bring in, you have a problem, it becomes a Gordian knot, you can't get around it. Now you bring in the heavies, and you look as if you're targeting people. Whereas if you take the proactive approach, there's no targeting, because we're all living by the same expectations. It's the Property Maintenance Code, the International Property Maintenance Code, and we're just enforcing it rather than waiting for complaints.
And what do you think our issues, I mean, how many issues do we have? I feel like there's like one person that we keep talking about. How many others are there? Are there lots of these people that aren't, you know?
Well, I don't know, because number one, I'm not a code enforcement officer. Number two, I've not driven around the community looking for
But our guy isn't like
violations.
forwarding a whole bunch of issues to us, then, is what you're saying?
Our guy is not proactively doing anything. Our guy is not driving around. I mean, he does not have a hot list. He would do that. He would do that.
He responds in a timely manner when we ask him, though. It appears.
He does, well.
So with this guy,
Whatever timely means.
I'm sorry, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
So with this guy, could like you do one annual drive through and give us a lump sum for that? And, you know, if we have a lot of issues, we know what they are. I mean, you know, we follow up on them with our own guy, you know, in the future. I mean, do a cursory. There's probably a million ways to look at this, but.
Yeah, I think the first question that needs to be asked, and is, do you want us to take a more aggressive approach to property maintenance issues? Is that what the community wants?
Is that a question?
I mean,
now, or-
sure.
I would have Art Capuzzi.
Yeah, come on up so we can get you on the mic here.
How much latitude will this gentleman have? Will he be driving up our driveways, walking through our yards, peeking behind the bushes? That would be my concern.
Right. Yeah, it's a legitimate question.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, and I'm not an expert on this, counsel, maybe you can help us with this, but I mean, my understanding is that he can't do anything. He can't trespass. That's as our existing.
You're talking about a marked car with a uniformed officer,
Yep.
per se. What is his, what's he sworn to do? Who swears him in? What's his latitude?
Well, again, we already have a property enforcement officer.
Yeah,
so he would just replace that. He would in one vision of this, as Commissioner
I'm
DePlato
aware of
points
the
out.
issues that
Right.
have been on the table and your difficulties resolving them. But I'm concerned about someone coming up my driveway, walking through my yard.
Well, that would be trespassing. He can't trespass.
Well, I mean,
So then-
doesn't code enforcement already have the police power to enter your property, or do you have to, what is our?
They
how
can
does it work
get
there?
an administrative search warrant, but they have to
Okay.
like any other law enforcement officer, they have to get that from a judicial magistrate.
I know, but how does he gather the evidence to get that search warrant? He's not gonna get this from standing down on the curb looking up at your property. You're talking about the health department getting involved. How would he get that information?
I think he has to build a case. Go ahead.
Can he independently select a site, or does he have to react to a complaint?
No, he does not have to react to a complaint. That's the whole point, is he can
Right.
drive down the street and say, there's a pool, it's an uncovered pool, I can see it from the street, I'm gonna write a ticket, I'm gonna write it.
So he could also serve his own self-interest.
The more work he generates, the more charge he.
Right.
Well, that's correct,
That's what I'm
that's
saying.
right, that's right. It's because he's getting paid hourly.
Be careful.
Step up, please, and say your name.
Tom Benedict.
Hi, Tom.
Be careful what you wish for, because this sounds like a very open-ended situation. He comes in and says, okay, we got a problem 2 doors up here. Right, we all see the problem, we know the problem's there. However, he starts driving around the community and he sees something sticking out from behind your shed, or he doesn't like the way you have your pool in your yard, or a whole litany of things. You've just opened up a can of worms, you've hired them, we're stuck with them, you're paying the bill. Be careful.
Don Black, Weber Road. From what I understand, like the Sewickley Heights Manor is about 62% of the population. I read that somewhere. So you're really saying like you kind of have an HOA in your community.
Not kind of, there is an HOA in the community.
HOA.
Yep,
Okay, the rest of us don't.
that's right.
So you're basically gonna quadruple the budget from 2,000 to possibly as much as 8,000 for 38% of the township.
Yeah, and let's not forget that Masonic Village is a huge percentage as well. There's not gonna be any
Yeah,
violations
they're not
there
gonna get
either.
cited.
Okay. Well,
We
I'm
have-
saying you're really increasing the budget for this, and I'm not saying there's not a need.
Okay, wait, let everybody, one conversation at a time, please.
I pass a need every day. I know there's a need. I understand that. But frankly, it sounds a little bit big brotherish, you know? And you already have an enforcement in place.
Why wouldn't we start with using our own code enforcement guide?
I'm
So
sorry.
I'm saying, why?
I'm hard of hearing. I'm sorry.
So am I, so both of you, we should
Okay.
yell at each other.
Yeah, all right.
I said, why wouldn't we just use our own code enforcement guide to identify those places where there's a judgment that something needs to be done to improve the situation? If that doesn't work, maybe then we come back and consider this. I agree. Turning this guy loose sounds to me like it's a good thing the election's over, because we wouldn't get voted in the next time around.
He didn't laugh at that.
I did. I think.
Again, I don't, my bread is not buttered either way here. I'm trying to respond to complaints that we're receiving from residents, and I'm trying to figure out a way that we can solve. Can we have one conversation at a time, please? I'm trying to solve a way, trying to come up with a way to solve a problem that is not getting solved with our existing approach.
Some of the problems we've dealt with repeatedly, the bottom line problem is that the property owner's got financial problems, and having this guy beat up on him isn't going to solve his financial problems or his ability to fix things.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that.
Whatever solution you arrive at, does he have any capability of fixing it anyway? You know what I'm saying? I mean, you fine him, or lock him up, whatever you do. He still can't fix it. He doesn't have the means to fix it. What do you do?
I don't know the answer to that. But what I'm saying is that I'm trying to find somebody who does.
And that's why we don't have debtor's prison anymore.
I would prefer to have our guy go out and do like a windshield survey, identify major issues like safety issues, like swimming pools without fences around them, or, you know, things like that. And, you know, deal with those, you know, like the big red flags, and go from there, you know.
Matt, did I hear you say that you did discuss with him working on a one-off basis?
Yeah, we did.
And his reply is what?
I could do that. And we specifically addressed the issue that started this all off. And we told him about it. We told him the problems with it. We told him the concerns. And he didn't say, "Oh, I know exactly how to deal with that." That was by no means what he said. But he also didn't say, "Oh, you're never going to solve that problem."
It looks like we have an opportunity to have our cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
If we keep our current status as is and have an agreement with that firm that when we need them, we'll call them. We have the eyes and ears on the street without the concern of, you know, no rains on the, and yet we have the capability of going to calling in the reserves and putting a little bit more pressure on it, because these discussions can go on forever.
Okay. Well, I am not advancing a motion. I'm not putting one out tonight, and I'm not putting it out next week.
Okay.
So I will leave that if anybody else. I mean, I've said my piece.
Thank you for collecting that information.
And what I would encourage, again, I am not advancing a motion. So if any of you wish for a motion to be advanced, I encourage you to let one of us know. If there is a thought that you have with respect to these, to any of these options that we've discussed, I'd be happy to hear it from you, but I really want it to come from you and not from me. Fair enough? Okay. All right. Next item of new business is social media policy. This is a holdover from Seven Springs as well. I think I'm going to move that we defer this conversation for 1 month.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, we'll discuss that at next month's. We'll discuss that next month at the workshop meeting. Snow event parking cards. This was a issue that came up last year in the winter, and we carried it out. The genesis behind this is that several different areas in the township, and in this one, Weber Road and Swickley Heights Manor are both evenly aligned. There's a problem with respect to cars parking on the roads during snow events. One of the things that I love about Aleppo and in particular Swickley Heights Manor, I'm sure that those of you on Weber Road feel the same way, is that you can pretty much park wherever you want. We're not like in the village where you've got all these complaints about resident parking only, or you got friends coming over and you can only park in certain places. But that good nature runs out when it starts to snow, and we have the plows that are trying to come up and down the street, and we've got cars parked on the street. So this was a request from our public works crews last winter that we try to address this issue. And so what we cooked up was this idea of we have these waterproof cards that I'm going to pass out to commissioners. We'll have, the road crews will have these, the police will have these, the commissioners will have these. And the idea is simply, if there's somebody parked on the street when it's snowing, stick one of these under the windshield. It's not a ticket. It just says, please don't park on the street during snow emergencies. We thought that we would give this a try. Let's just see if maybe it's an education issue. Maybe people don't really understand the issue of the snowplow on the road. So if you get this, if your neighbors get one of these, I hope that you can pass along what's going on here and you can explain where this stands. Anybody have any questions?
Good idea.
So, yeah, just take a handful.
Mhm. Good idea.
Can I use these in the city? But I'll just put City of Pittsburgh.
Then they'll say, what's Aleppo?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, if there ever is a 7 o'clock topic that we're dealing with at 8:45, it is the budget.
Well, my intent was to have the budget memo written and handed to you today, but today happened in a different way. So it is not ready for you tonight. So it is, the budget itself is ready, but the memo's not prepared. So you will be getting that sometime later this week.
Correct me if I'm wrong, it's 99.9% complete
It's
and no tax increase.
yes, that can be announced, yes. As per that will be proposed as it's not asked for a tax increase.
So we're the opposite of the state of Pennsylvania.
Right.
We know how we're going to collect the money. We just don't know how we're going to spend it yet, as opposed to figuring out how we're going to spend the money and then figure out how we're going to collect it later, right?
And then just one other comment, the most, Gwen, all right?
Mhm.
The most significant aspect of the budget is roads. And we've had a road study completed that projects much further than normal, 20 years. We know how much it would cost to repair all the roads every 20 years. And we're trying to build up the capital reserves. And some of those reserves will come from the general fund, which is at the moment well beyond what is required. And we're just making sure that 12 years ago, when none of us are here, that there'll still be money in the bank to fix roads with no tax increase.
You just got elected to another 15-year term, didn't you?
I think so. I'd vote for that.
Okay, so we'll get the budget at some point, you think this week?
Yeah, you'll get it this week and it has to be, the budget has to be adopted by ordinance and the millage has to be set by ordinance. So that will be advertised. So you will not vote on the budget until December. So you'll have plenty of time for commissioners to weigh in, ask questions, do that kind of stuff. It will not be voted on until the December legislative meeting.
Excellent.
Thank you.
And I won't be here.
Okay, any other new business? All right, neighbors, this is your time for citizen participation. Please do not take my comment about the late hour to have a chilling effect on anything you want to say. We come here to hear from you. You all have been very patient through some very long conversations tonight. So please speak up. Come on. I see no hands.
How about applause? No.
Yeah,
Don't get that in.
Mayor, I have something to say.
Yes, please. Come forward so we can hear you.
I know, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
What I was gonna say is, we're fortunate on Redgate. All of our neighbors are nice and neat, the yards are great. But the one thing I always see, and I know the code person can't do anything about this, there's always trash. I always see trash along the property lines. And like, I walk my dog, down Redgate and over to Merriman, around towards Masonic, and I always see trash. I know a lot of it could be people, working and as they're driving by. But, can we do anything about it?
Are you speaking of trash in the roads or trash in yards?
Well, they're in the roads. Occasionally I'll see trash in yards too. But, I mean, technically, it's like Kathy's property across the street that, that's, it's not a yard, but people own it. That I'll see stuff that people are just throwing.
Like litter along the road.
Litter along the
Sounds like an Earth
roads.
Day event to me.
Clean up.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can tell you that in 2017, we picked up 40, what's my number, Gwen? It's 47? Am I getting that right?
47 bags, I think.
47 bags of trash along Deer Run Road on Earth Day.
I
So,
believe it.
we how many do we have there? 13 volunteers?
There was a good number. We even had a government official come out and make his presence known, and there was sure was a lot of different stuff there.
That's right.
Yeah, I
But the
believe that.
next week,
It was right back.
it
Yeah.
was right back there, and it was, in their defense, it's been discussed, addressed. Tim has brought it up. They've walked the road at times, so it's an issue.
Right.
How do you solve it? I went down the bottom of my driveway this morning and there was a beer can in the road, so it's an issue.
Right.
And we do not have the road litter that you do. You do have a substantial amount of road litter, but, well, I wish. I
But
really,
that's why I just
truly
thought I'd
wish-
mention it because we're talking about someone who can, hand out tickets for maintenance on houses. And like I said, we've been, to my knowledge, where I live, it's very fortunate that, a lot of people have, they really take care of their yards. But that's the only issue that I see all the time.
The public works crews do usually do a fall cleanup and a spring cleanup of roadside trash, so, they do have that scheduled, sounds like maybe.
But that doesn't go into yards. I mean, if the trash is in yards.
Well, if it's in the front, if it's in the middle of the front yard, it doesn't, but if it's in the yard alongside of the road, they do grab that.
I think it'd be good if you gave to Gwen the specific area.
Okay. Yeah, I do that, yeah.
Red Gate.
Is that Red Gate, Deer Run, over to Masonic, up by Habala, turn around.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean that one?
Yep, we know the path.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, I just
Okay.
thought I'd mention it, that's all.
Well, thank
because,
you for saying something.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Now that the ice is broken, anybody else? Yes, ma'am. Come up to the front, please.
I'm Carolyn Kennedy. And I have a question.
Come up further. You got to get on this microphone here. You got to get within earshot of that microphone.
I'm Carolyn Kennedy from up on Weber Road. Now, there's a rumor going around. I hope it's only a rumor, that someone is looking into the property back Leekwood. And it's behind my house on Weber Road for building, which would be great. I have no problem with building individual homes, family homes. But the rumor is that it's a condominium person. And that would actually mess up the whole family home up there.
Bingo.
The bingo lots. That's what we're.
And it's nice property back there. It's beautiful property. But for individual homes, it would be actually beautiful. And for everybody in the area, in the neighborhood, individual homes would be a better option, I would think, than a condominium.
Have we heard anything, Gwen?
I have not.
It's a rumor.
I mean,
Couple meetings ago, I thought.
Oh, no. Yeah, we've heard.
since then is what,
I'm sorry,
I have not
what?
heard anything since then.
Well, inform them of what did transpire though. Didn't someone write a letter that was interested in the property?
In the bingo lots.
That was the bingo lot.
Bingo lot.
Same.
I know,
That's what
but
That
they
is
were
the bingo
talking
lots.
about.
Everything up here at one time was bingo lots.
They were just proposing.
They came in and said,
acquisition.
how would we address the back taxes and that sort of thing on the bingo lots?
It
And we
takes
said,
a lot of work.
we asked them to specify what lots they were talking about. And they said, we'll have to get back to you, and we haven't heard from them.
It takes a lot of work and a lot of money,
But
as I think you know.
in that conversation, there wasn't anything specific about what kind of development they were talking about.
No, not at all.
Sneak in the-
We did refer them as a delinquent tax matter to the school district because we defer anything involving the collection of delinquent taxes or property sales to satisfy delinquent taxes. We defer to the school district and the school district solicitor for that. So that's the last we heard.
But my understanding of those lots is that they're so tiny. How could you have a townhome development on any of those lots?
They want to
They're all-
consolidate, they want to consolidate.
1800s.
I got you.
These lots were given out at bingo games in the 1800s in Pittsburgh. That's how this was all set up. I have the original map at home.
They're like 30 foot by 100, but there's like 12 of them, right?
Mhm.
Or maybe more.
There's more than 12. There's a whole bunch up there.
Okay, well,
It would actually just drop the poor deer in my backyard.
yes, sir.
Tim Scott, Weber Road. I'm going to elaborate on what she said, but a lot of residents over here have been discussing and wanting to know, what will it take to change Weber Road from R2 to R1 and disallow townhomes?
So I got an email about this today.
I know he couldn't be here. He
right.
and I talked about it.
And it made me go back and look at some of our recordings from our earlier meetings. And in May, we had a lengthy conversation about this with an expert in zoning who had drawn our map. And at the end of that conversation, there was no action taken. There was no action that we could justify taking to move it from R1 for the reasons that were substantially set forth in that meeting. And I'd be happy to send that back to you because I couldn't begin to explain what took place in an hour-long meeting in a 5-minute talk. But I'd be happy to send you. I would encourage you to go watch that expert. He said it better than I could say it.
Well, what the residents over here want to know is it possible to change this to R1?
And
I know it would require rezoning and probably ordinance changes and everything, but we just want to know, what would it take? Can we do it?
Yeah. And again, I don't want to paraphrase an hour-long meeting in a short blurb. I'd far rather have you watch what he said, but the short answer was not easily. I mean, and the concern was that there would be unintended consequences beyond just accomplishing your goal. So could it be done? Yeah, it could be done. Anything could be done. But could it be done wisely was a different question. And Commissioner Dare, as I watched that video, you were very helpful in that.
I don't recall the discussion in great detail, but I seem to recall that there was also a spot zoning issue that was a possibility that, at this point, trying to go back and change the zoning to preclude things that were otherwise historically allowed. You can run into some spot zoning issues, which makes the zoning invalid.
What does that mean, spot zoning?
If it's changing the zoning to prevent somebody from doing something that is in the current zoning is permitted, and they bought the property when it was subject to the zoning that allowed the use that they wanted to do. And then you say, well, I don't want you to do what you want to do, even though it's currently permitted. So I'm going to change the zoning on you so you can't do it.
In other words, there could be legal ramifications if you tried to do this and
The property owner would make an argument that I bought the property subject to the current zoning, which allows
townhouses.
And that contributed.
I understand that the one up on Ferndale, you can't stop that. What
Right.
we're talking about is the property that Mrs. Kennedy's talking about back up between Leetwood and Weber and Ferndale.
I mean, you're talking about these bingo
Bingo
lots.
Which right now, apparently, nobody knows who owns all of them. Am I correct, Lynn?
They're owned by a bunch of different people, some of them dead.
Some of them dead. So,
No, I have no idea what the process would be like if you wanted to try to rezone property that was subject to a bunch of delinquent taxes and you didn't even know who many of the property owners were. Because if you're going to do a rezoning, don't you have to start with notifying the property owner?
Part of it. Yeah. That's part of the process.
But I mean, and here again, hear me saying, I think I speak on behalf of a lot of the commissioners up here. I want to do what you want to do in your neighborhood, right? I'm not sitting up here. I don't have a development background. I'm not trying to develop this property. I want you to be happy in your neighborhood up here. So hang on for 1 second, please. I mean, I am happy to advance this conversation just like we did back in April. We had that conversation with the expert because there were residents that were coming in that wanted to advance this conversation. So we had the conversation, and it didn't get advanced beyond having the conversation with the expert.
Did the conversation include these bingo lots, or was?
No, the bingo lots were not. We were concerned about other property at the top of Weber, right across from
It's certainly
Ferndale.
something we can at least revisit, looking at it specific to the bingo lots.
I'd be happy to do that, but I would encourage everybody, whether it's Commissioner Dara or folks in the audience, I would encourage you to start by watching that conversation that we already had with the expert, because it seems counterproductive to get right back into the same conversation, get to the exact same place we were, and go, oh man, that's
Could we
why
help
we
make
did
that
it.
available?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
What was
Well,
the date? What was
Tim,
the date?
we can help make that available.
Yeah.
Help you find it.
Thank you.
It was a long conversation. This was not a 4-minute.
Oh, no,
This
we
was
had
not a
we
4-minute
had-
conversation.
We
It was
had a
long.
zoning expert in
It
here.
was,
Yeah.
what, May?
So I will include that in the digest for tonight. I'll include a link to that. Anybody else? Come on down.
My name is Nick Kahn. Me and my wife Margaret are recent residents of Aleppo.
Welcome.
Thank you. First thing would be, how are current issues like ordinances, like we were talking about, reported? Or how are those presented to the enforcement officer currently?
Gwen, do you want to jump on that?
Usually it's contact me with a complaint and then I pass it on to him. And complaints are anonymous, so I don't reveal who called.
Okay. I was just wondering if it'd be very easy or feasible to create a portal on our township website where someone could just anonymously, select a department, whether it's roads or sanitation or, something like that. Type in the comment, where they're seeing it, what address, about where it is, and that just gets filtered to the correct department via email or something like that. If that would be simple, save time.
That would help good enforcement.
Yeah. Ironically, Gwen and I are knee deep in the website redevelopment process right now, so I can see Gwen writing that down on her list of things for us to discuss with MIBS, and we will look into that. It's a good idea.
Second thing, we live over on South McCoy Place Road, just across the Glen Mitchell here. And since we've moved in, we've had obviously mail delivered and all kinds of packages delivered. The housing numbers on our street are identical to McCoy Place Road because it's just, the street is just a giant L. And I'd have to think that many of our neighbors also, so we receive 167 McCoy Place Road as well as 167 South McCoy Place Road and vice versa. So there's just a constant stream of mail getting and packages getting delivered to the wrong house.
Yeah.
What are the odds, or is it even possible to ever get different address numbers or rename the two parts of the street actually completely different names?
Tell me your name again.
Nick Kahn.
Nick, welcome to Aleppo Township.
Does it feel like Groundhog
Yeah,
Day
this
here?
is
Yeah,
this
there you
is
go.
not this is a known issue. I won't even defer you to a video because it would be too many videos. This came up, I don't know, a year ago, that we really pushed hard on it about 2 years ago, and we formed a task force that was led by a former commissioner who lived in that neighborhood, and she got a bunch of your neighbors together, and the result of it was, oh hell no, you're not going to change our street
That's
address.
what I think the problem would be.
So we left it. We've tried. I'm sure you've seen some of the bright neon signs that try to explain the difference.
Yeah.
Those were our feeble efforts at solving the problem. Short of what you're articulating, the correct way to solve that problem is to change one of the names. And Gwen and I laugh all the time about some things that we would do differently if we were building the township from the ground up. That's one of them.
If the majority of residents on one street or the other would agree, would that be something that could be moved
Yeah.
forward?
What do you keep hearing me say? I want to do what you want to do in your neighborhood. If you get people that want to do it, then we've gone down that road before. So by all means, if you want help with that, I'd be happy to revisit that issue. But I can tell you the historical perspective is not favorable to that.
Thanks.
Welcome, Nick.
Can I add something to that?
Please.
I'm a retired mail carrier. Best thing you can do, believe me, is just put it inside your mailbox, your name, highlight it, whatever you have to do, put South McCoy, highlight it. That's the best you can do. You're not gonna get them to change the numbers. Sure.
Well, I mean, Nick, I will just point out as a matter of public safety that this actually came up when it came up last time. There were bigger issues than packages getting not delivered. There were ambulances that were going to the wrong place. And so, I mean, let me tell you, if you do have any reason to be calling 911, make sure you are very clear with what's going on. Right. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Who's this guy?
Identify yourself, please. All the way forward, please.
I have a question. You brought up about these bingo lots in order, if you possibly consider changing the zoning, you needed addresses. Now, when the zoning was changed up there, correct me, 30 years ago?
It has been R2 since as far back as I can remember.
Which I never remember it being changed. I've been up there for over 37 years.
And I think it hasn't changed. I think it's been R2.
Well, that's what the expert said when I went back and I watched the video. He said that other than adding Weber's Corner, it's been R2
My question
forever.
to you though, now how could the zoning be changed if you didn't know the names of these bingo lots legally? How could the zoning be changed?
It hasn't been changed. You were asking, how could we do it now?
It changed from the 1800s. This was laid out originally as a
Well, there might have been known property owners and taxpayers in the 1800s.
But my question is there any chance, I'm not talking just those lots there, but the lots on Ingleside, to change that all back to an R1.
Well, when you say back, can you tell us when it was R1?
Like I said, I've been over here over 37 years and I don't recall.
It's always been R2.
How far back does it go to that? How, is there a record in this township saying when it was R2? Because how this was originally laid out as Glenmore plan. There's still drawings. The roads are still paper roads. Now, how could it, when was it changed from then? That's my question to you.
But I
Well,
don't
I'm sure
understand.
someone could do the research.
We have to go to the county, right? Do we report, like send a comp plan and our zoning?
Yeah.
It goes in the comp plan.
I mean,
doesn't it?
someone could answer that question. It would take some research, but we could do it.
I mean, I'm just curious because, I mean, you still got the roads laid out here when it was Glenmore plan.
We got just the guy for that.
That's my question to the board.
Okay. I don't think we're going to answer it tonight.
I don't think you are either, but I mean, I think that's an avenue to pursue.
Who's going to accept the challenge?
I mean, I can go back through the ordinances and pull up when the dates of the zoning ordinances and see what they said, but I mean, I can go back to I know I can get back to the 70s. And I know we have stuff from the 70s.
Would the guy that looked at the last rezoning question where we only created Weber's Corner, he might have some records.
I'm sure he has records. And that's the firm that redid the zoning. They didn't change any districts other than create
Right,
Weber's
but
Corner.
they would have looked at the
refreshed it.
history anyway.
Right.
Do you know who that
Contact
is?
him, sure.
Okay,
Thank you.
We'll get you an
We'll
answer.
get you an answer.
Thank you.
good point, Tom.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Once, twice.
Executive session.
We have a session. We're moving into executive session.
Okay, so at this point, we are going to go into an executive session. The meeting is not adjourned so that we can have this executive session. The executive session is to discuss pending litigation. For the folks who are watching at home, we will not be coming back onto the recording when we come out of the executive session. So for all intents and purposes, for the audience and for folks watching at home, this is the end of the night. Thank you all very much for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.